Jesus freak here. And this is just, I guess some of it's a bunch of theorizing. See, one of the things that has been a focus for me is the history of language, the history of words, and how various languages are interrelated. And this is why it galls me when I hear such obviously counter to reality stuff from King James onlyists who don't seem to understand how languages work and try to trace things through the impossible practically, and who are basically trying to say, oh, the King James says this, so not only must it be true, but there has to be some sort of justification as to how this is the only possible reading. I'm sorry, but that's eisegesis. That's not how biblical understanding works. And no doubt, this always comes up. Acts 12:4 always comes up when it says, and when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Now, I can tell you where Easter came from here. It came from William Tyndale. See, when Tyndale originally worked on his New Testament, there wasn't really a word for Passover. Wycliffe left the word in Latin. He left the word as Pasch. Now, initially, Tyndale just wrote Easter, which is a valid translation of what the word is used as in, medieval period and whatever. But not correct for the time being. You see, we appropriated the name. And this is where you get your words in modern Romance languages, Pâques in French, Pasqua in Italian. I think it's Pasqua in Spanish, spelled differently. These all obviously come from Pascha in Latin and Greek. Now, Tyndale in 1530, when he translated the first 5 books of the Old Testament, realized this wasn't going to fly and came up with the word Passover to translate the Hebrew word. But he never went back and fixed this problem in this Greek translation to English of the New Testament. Now, ordinarily in the King James Version, this was fixed. But for some reason, they left it in that one place. Now, some people are going to say, oh, but the unleavened bread is after the Passover. Now, even secular scholars are going to tell you whoever wrote Acts is the same person who wrote Luke. And let me point something out here. It's Luke 22:1. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover. Luke didn't differentiate. He uses 2 terms interchangeably. So there's no reason he couldn't say, the feast of unleavened bread was the Passover. As far as he was concerned, it was. Now, the Geneva Bible got this right. I'm holding here, I have a modern spelling, text only, of it's 1587 edition, so it has the 1576 revision of the Geneva New Testament. here it says, and when he had caught him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to be kept, intending after the Passover to bring him forth to the people. Which is, as everyone who reads any other version is aware, this is the obviously correct reading. Now, a lot of the history of the Germanic language family, which includes English. English is a West Germanic language, so its closest relatives are Frisian, Dutch, Low German, and Modern German. I believe Yiddish is also West Germanic language because it's a very close relative of German. But yeah, I think the people who are trying to associate Easter, which is named for a Teutonic deity, after Babylonian deities, Greek deities, Phoenician deities, are barking up the wrong tree. The word Easter actually has its derivation, believe it or not, in the English word east, more or less. This is a little bit of an oversimplification, but basically it comes from the word east. Why? Because the sun rises in the east. I believe that there's a possibility it may have a distant relative in Greek, eos, meaning dawn. Again, dawn in east. You're talking something that originally referred to a pagan festival for the vernal equinox, March 21st, when days start becoming longer than nights, because that's the point where days and nights are equal. It's a lot simpler than the whole Ishtar thing. And if you can believe it, this whole explanation of Easter, East, and stuff, you can probably trace a lot of this. I think a lot of this research was done by Jakob Grimm. Yes, him of the fairy tales. He was a linguist, first and foremost. And his collection of fairy tales and folk tales was actually intended to help unify the German language. But like I said, German is actually fairly closely related to English, so some of the things that relate to German also relate to English. So, yeah, it's not about Ishtar, it's not about Astarte, Asherah, whatever. It's about a Germanic dawn goddess or so. Jesus freak out.